All right, let's go to the board. This particular game has some really cool stuff in it for us to learn from. I get this from one of Andy Soltis's books. This is by Grosspeter and Radulov. It was played in Deal 1989. D4, D6, D pawn opening. Okay, then E4 and knight f6. Now, from the gathered wisdom, if your opponent doesn't immediately put a pawn on one of those two squares, you cannot go wrong by pushing both of your center pawns as far up as they can go on the first move. You cannot go wrong here. So white's got a great opening. And notice the logicality of this is so fascinating to me. The knight comes out and is hitting the pawn, and this is the king pawn. So that's attacked and it's unprotected. It makes sense, therefore, that the next piece up is knight c3 to protect that e4 pawn, right? And now he's going to this. He hasn't pushed further with his pawn. So this is kind of called a small center as opposed to white's big center. The main big difference here is white has more space at this point. And that can be a temporary thing depending on how you play the pawns and produce the pawn structure and use tactics to get rid of pieces. So this is not a permanent situation, but it is an important one. And now, once again, general rule, knights before bishops, because the knights have so little power on their home square, bring them out in the field, and it increases it fourfold. That's why you want your knights out quick. By simply pressing the pawn, it didn't give that knight anything except an extra square, right? But the bishop, by pressing the queen pawn, added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more squares on that diagonal. So that instantly increased the strength of the bishop really well, and barely with the knight. So knights before bishops, to get their power emphasized much greater, and now you can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, instead of just the 1, 2, and 3. Now it's got 8. And so this is the theme. So both pawns up as far as they can go on the first move, and both knights out is a superb opening. Both of the pawns are covered by the knights, the queen pawn with the added extra power of the queen backing it. So this knight comes out first in case you're not aware that you probably ought to protect the king pawn with that knight, or you might lose it. And granted, it's early in the game. To begin an attack right now, this early, is absolutely ludicrous. It's out of the question. Don't do it. It's just not good chess. So this is why I wanted to emphasize that. And now immediately, queen a5. Now understand, these guys are not Twinkies at chess. They are really, really good chess players, masters. I'm not sure if they're grandmasters or not, but they're very powerful players. And instantly, the second piece he's bringing out is the queen. So, we say chess rules are made. And of course, chess rules can be broken. You must be real careful pulling your queen out so early, because she can become a target. And every time you do target her, it is a forcing move if you don't want to lose her. Sometimes if they threaten a knight, you don't care because you can make another move and threaten their rook. So they're not going to take your knight. They're going to protect their rook. With the queen, that's different. If you go after the queen, they're not going to ignore that and go after a rook. No, because the queen is so much more powerful. So bringing the queen out early, not so good. Now, it's a pin, of course, the knight to the king, and it's a great diagonal on the king. There's no question about that. However, I just wanted to point that out. Now is the time to begin your attack. And this is what is so remarkably interesting. You say, dude, you just said a couple of minutes ago that it wasn't time to attack, that you don't have very much development, and it's ridiculous to try. But the early queen move out changes everything. And this is one of the remarkable parts of chess. Push that pawn and attack that knight is what the player did. Now, he didn't trap it. He does have knight e4, which yet again becomes another target, easier to get to now than it was back in his own home base camp. The knight and the queen can coordinate here, except the queen is blocked. And true, the king is also, the knight is stopped, and now the knight is attacking the knight. The rule, when you pin a piece, then attack it. And that's why, by presenting his challenge, to go there is silly. No, that doesn't coordinate your pieces at all. It leaves your knight out there in the middle of nowhere doing nothing. White has not castled yet. I mean, yeah, granted, he is hitting this square. Do you really think White is going to let him hit that square and fork the queen and rook? Seriously? You really think that's going to happen this early, right now? It's not happening, guys. That's not how it works. Not with these two, anyway. So that move is obviously inferior. Besides, centralizing the knight magnifies its dominion right through the center, right into deep into the territory of White. So that's why the knight e4. Now the pawn can't take the knight, so he does begin to eliminate central pawns, which determine the character of a game, whether they close the center or open the center. Now, at this point, they haven't developed enough yet to get castled one direction or the other. So the theme at this point is kings in the center, and what you want to do in that instance is open up the center. So once you push that pawn, don't ignore it, take it as far as it'll go. And now again, we see the obvious move by the black pieces, without question. You've got the piece pinned, and you've attacked the piece, now take it. This is correct. Yes. Now, White begins to think, oh my gosh, this is bad. This is really bad because I'm in trouble right now. I'm in the process of losing a rook this quick. But because of his central thrust with his pawn, that has to be addressed by black. It's better not to continue pressing the attack with the queen and lose both of your central pawns. That would not work. Against real strong players, don't do it. So he does address this, and he takes the pawn right now instead of getting the pawn and forking and taking the rook. He's not going to get that rook anyway, for a very obvious reason. So he's going to develop instead. He doesn't worry about protecting that pawn by moving the bishop over, moving the queen up. It doesn't matter, because developing pieces, getting more pieces out there is much more important than worrying about a squirrely little phony attack. If the queen is to take that pawn, then the bishop and the queen's got the rook covered. So you're not in trouble if that's a situation with the queen. Now, if it was a bishop, then you're in trouble. You're losing your rook. Do you see the difference? The queen is too high of a piece to lose for just taking the rook. But if that had been a bishop, oh, hot dog, yes. Yeah, baby, he would have done that instantly. With the queen, you don't do that. You can't do that. It's a complete waste of time. What he has been able to accomplish, the black pieces at this point, is the doubling up of the white pawns, messing up the pawn structure on the queen side, more or less, if that can be blockaded. It's not a weakness if it can't be blockaded, and isn't blockaded. Make no mistake about it. These two pawns, if they were advanced, would be exquisitely powerful supporters of the center for pieces and outposts. That would be a real strong setup. So they are not weaknesses just yet. Don't freak out if you get doubled pawns early on. This is actually typical in this kind of an opening. So he ignores this and he brings out another piece. That's what a strong player will do. And again, getting ready to castle, very correct play. And then, of course, they're both going to castle. Okay, so now that we've got the introductory pieces moved out, the pawns moved, they're on their squares, etc. We've got the kings tucked away. Now we need to finish our development, right? After the castling. The attack had begun, but it's over. But notice what was accomplished. With that central thrust of the white pawn, the queen over here didn't accomplish anything hardly. Caused an exchange and a little bit of difference in the pawn structure, which truly plays no significant point in the rest of this game. So that was a complete waste of time of black. And now he is really behind in development bad, because now what the rook does is he goes and takes the open file. Rook E1. The attack is beginning to materialize now. What white's doing is setting his pieces on the maximal squares for maximal power in an attack, because black moved his queen out first. It did not help him. Now black's going to attempt to make up for this. Bishop E6. Those two central bishops are very powerful. Don't underestimate them. So he is trying to get developed, which is a very proper thing to do. And now note the other thing white will do is he will not neglect his rooks. He will put them on the half open file, the partial open file, target right here, and the E file. And you say, well, that's stupid. He just lost a pawn. Who cares? That's not what's happening here. Development is even more important. If the queen was to do this, it would be a complete waste of time. Yeah, it would get a pawn, but then you'd have to move back, and it would actually strengthen your rook or even your bishop by bringing the bishop up and making sure the queen is cut. It just doesn't work. That's not what white's worried about. Much stronger position to get yourself a target. And the reason why shows up. Because now Again, notice, and this isn't necessarily a defect, and yet in a way, it is a weaker center with the pawns not as far forward as they can be, and the white central pawns are stronger, giving more space, which means more coordination of pieces. So this is getting interesting quick. And now the doubled pawns begin to press forward. Because he didn't press forward with either his own C or D pawn, white, with his doubled pawns, presses that front C pawn and it adds power to his center. Right there and right there. That's always important because now he's got 3 pieces hitting the E5 square, which is an exquisite square to launch a very powerful attack against a castled king. So white is setting the stages now. Let's see what happens. The queen is mobile, and she shows it. Queen H5, zip all the way across the other side. Now, this changes the character of a type of either attack or defense, because over here, now that the king is castled, over here it's doing nothing. The queen certainly can't take the rook, so it's a waste of time here. Over here, however, oh, wait. Now we have some potential. Move that pawn up, bump the bishop up, and we've got some serious potential stuff here. We've also got another pin on the other knight to the queen. If white does not want to exchange queens, that could be a big factor. So this really gets interesting quick because he's moving his queen around. Now notice that that is the 1, 2, the second move of the queen. And because of that, this is a further expansion of a central pawn. Notice the power of the D pawn is because of the doubled pawns that he has pushed to C4, and now this thrust has sting, challenging the bishop. So white is not letting black get set up or coordinated, while white is gaining more space in order to coordinate his pieces. This is key to this game. I know I've made a big deal in the past because I was touting Jeremy Silman, which I will always do because he's so dang good and important to know. This theme of gaining extra space is critical because the coordination of the black pieces is very nice, but they're not attacking anything vital. They're not hitting anything vital. If they were there, that would be spooky for white. You see the difference, right? So the closest one, the furthest one out, is the target. That makes sense. So let's see what he does with it. Of course, C is going to take D5, but of course, and C is going to take D5 again, but of course, yes. And rather than the bishop, the queen again makes a third move, 1, 2, and now 3, a third move back, taking the pawn, while because he is better developed now, the white rook gains extremely excellent power to challenge that queen all the way across. Now she must retreat, which is yet again another move. He gains enormous power with tempo. That's critical. That's critical because I'm going to show you the other critical part that begins the attack. It begins here. There's nowhere good for the queen to go. She's not going here. She's not going here. She's not going here. And she's been there, and there's nothing to do there because her bad bishop is bad. He can't back her up yet. She's not going to go there, and she dang sure can't take the rook. She's not going to go there. She's not going to go there. She could take the pawn, but honestly, what would that net black? The queen is so far out of play, and yet again making another move to become a target, so that then she'll have to move away again. You getting the picture? So queen comes back here. Queen b7. Now, I've mentioned in the past, it's really important to read the board. What do we see? And this is so cool because this particular game brings this element out really well. Really well. I'm having a hard time finding a better game to illustrate showing us pull the trigger. It's time to attack right now. Now, and the key to an attack is once you start, nothing is sacred. You throw everything you have at the king. You sacrifice everything you can to get to the king. When you start attacking, it's everything. It's total pedal to the metal, baby. Your tires never grip the concrete. They are spinning out and you are rocketing up the road, right? Now is the time. Why? What do we see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, more or less, on that side of the board. And the powerful pieces are not in the game very much. The knight and rook still have not moved. That means he's playing more or less equivalent to 2 pieces down because of white's development. In contrast, he has a bishop going right to the castled king. He has a queen going right to the castled king. He has a knight jumping up right into the castled king. He has a wickedly awesome rook going right over to the castled king. He has another wickedly powerful rook coming straight up the gut. And notice that bishop's only defended by the queen now. Every line and avenue is saying attack because so much black power is away from the king. And that's why you're justified in the attack. I wanted to point that out. That is very stark. And here is the other thing that makes this so interesting. It becomes even more obvious. Okay, attack move number 1. Now, the king has no weaknesses around him. Black has done superb keeping that castled king strong. And he does have supporters around him. This is not going to be easy to break. Okay? So you have to have the mindset to sacrifice stuff. And I mean a lot, if that is what it's going to take. The first move is get the knight started. And notice that the knight is hitting the 8-7, which has a bishop as well. And the knight is hitting the f7 and the bishop, which is also hit by the rook. Notice the exquisite coordination of pieces aiming together at very critical squares because he pushed his central pawns and got more space. Notice the pawns are gone, but the space is not. And he's using it. That's key. That's key. So let's watch this unfold. You're not going to let the knight begin the assault. The knight has begun the assault. That is an affront. Do something about it. Get rid of that pesky cotton picking knight. Get rid of it. And I don't mean anything racist by saying cotton picking. I know people say that. I've got to change that expression, I suppose. I don't mean anything racist by it. That blasted knight. Get rid of that knight. Well, when you do that, of course, watch. You can exchange it using the bishop. And that wouldn't be bad because your bishop is undeveloped, even though it is exerting tremendous power because the pawn has moved, right? So you can exchange it with the bishop, but in this instance, you also have extra power to get the rook over there. So he takes it with the rook instead. And now black realizes, I don't have enough protection around my king. Yikes. So now he's developing, and it's too late. And this is so important. It really is too late. Let's watch how this unfolds. There is a beautiful combination that is actually a very common pattern that is seen with many games, and it begins, of course, with the sacrifice of the bishop taking h7. Now, there is an option. The king can go here, but it shortens the game tremendously because then you've got this and it's over. I mean, sincerely, it's just over. So you're virtually, if you're in black's position, you're forced to take the bishop. You got to take the bishop. It's too much power at that point. And now you've got the queen to h5. Now observe this. The forcing moves, every move he moves checks the king. That's called a forcing move. So that black doesn't have time to get his queen in the game. He doesn't have time to bring her over here and start exchanging pieces. He doesn't have time to open the pawns up to emphasize that rook out here, because every move white is making is checking the king. That's called a forcing move. That's an important element of the attack because you're getting your pieces closer to that king, which in turn will be able to coordinate better with each other in checkmating that king. That is really critical. At this point, though, you don't really have anything, the rook's in the way of the bishop. And this rook, yeah, you can take the bishop, but technically speaking, the bishop is not guarding the king. The pawns are. You still can't get to the king. So what do? The queen alone on the H file can't checkmate the king, and the rook is on the same row as the queen, so it can't slip in behind her or in front of her to checkmate the king. So you're kind of in a pickle here in a way until you recognize, hey, there's another sacrifice I can make. So do that. The key is break open the king. So the rook takes g7. Kablam! Fantastic rook sacrifice. Check. Once again, now this is the third forcing move in a row. The king can't move out of check, so he has to take the checking piece. And there we go. Now the king is finally open, and we've had to sacrifice a bishop and a rook, and both of those are powerful pieces. But the name of the game is not to keep all of your pieces. The name of the game is checkmate the king. So that's what we want to do. And the very best way now is finally bring in your bishop to h6 check. Not mate yet. Now there's two options. Neither one are good. Both of them lose. If you go to h7, you've got this. Check. Then the king moves. Then the bishop goes to here. Once more, because of all the forcing moves, he hasn't had time to bring in anything to protect his king. Even the rook, who is standing right next to the king, is helpless because the attack is on the other side of the king on the H file. Checkmate. Right? So this is critical. And now again, the same thing from here. If he dropped straight down, if you went to h7, I said h7. If he goes to g8, then you've got queen g5 check. And the only place is either here or here, and it doesn't matter because the next one is checkmate, regardless of which square, h7 or h8. So that's your chess game to help us see when is the right time to attack a king. One of the keys is your rich development in the beginning. Another key is pay attention to where the greater number of your opponent's pieces are on the board. If they are mostly in the center and on the king's side where the king castled, then it's probably not going to work to attack the king. In this instance, all the indicators were that the pieces are too far away. And because you had the better development, because you had the better space, you had more of your pieces pointing toward the king side, and therefore you could make your attack. So that is a wonderful illustrative game of this. I love games like that. I can't help it. I love games like that. So there's your chess game. Thank you for all your support and excitement with me in learning this chess stuff so that we can keep going on our chess journey. We're making progress. I've been saying that for years, but I really am. And someday I'll be able to demonstrate that, I hope. We'll see. I'm having too much fun analyzing these Grandmaster games right now. So, and you seem to be enjoying them too. So we're going to keep going along this route for a while, and we'll branch out into other activities as I have time. So stick with me and hit subscribe and get the notifications on, because I'm doing steady, regular chess games as well as chess shorts, and you are the beneficiaries, which is always my pleasure. So have fun, be good, do well, sleep good, and make lots of friends, and I will catch you in the next Backyard Professor Chess video.